Hi there. Well, I'm back. What a week that's been. Actually, it's been one of those where it's been really difficult to connect. I don't know why, but I've been sort of investigating all sorts of things. And I think probably the solution is to just clear the cache and restart. And it's taken me 4 days to work that one out. Anyway, so we've just had the introduction now. What a rousing introduction. That was the piece that I did on the 31st of May, which was Sunday. And it was really in tribute to what an amazing weekend we had. We had the SpaceX sort of launching and then arriving at the International Space Station. I just thought, wow. And just to see one of the stages land, remote control land on a ship at sea, and yeah, incredible. And I called that piece Infinite Goal because it just showed that there were no limits, and actually we ought to set our goals as high as we can, because really it was incredible to watch, and to think, that there they were. We had the full start on the Wednesday, and then on the Sunday off they went. Really amazing. Anyway, that brought the whole of May to an end, and we had quite an adventure in May. You had that final fanfare at the end, but I think let's just hear a little bit of the first day, because it just give you an idea of the development that we had, because that was a big fanfare, lots of brass and sort of big cymbals and bass drums and all sorts, but it started with this. And there you go. So isn't it incredible that you can start with something like that and then end up with a massive fanfare with lots of brass and a huge orchestra? That brings me to the topic of today's talk, and that's really small beginnings again, because obviously we've started a new month, and it started with a completely blank slate, and we started off with something. I suppose you have these, you've got the briefings and it's all a state of flux. And so I called this piece Flux, and it was because I wanted to create this idea that you had this material or something, a situation that you couldn't necessarily control, but you could do anything you wanted with it. And so I called this Flux. Let's have a listen to what it sounds like, and then so here we go. So what do you think of that? And I think that sets the scene for well, another month of adventures. But it's also quite vague. It started really with the glissandi in the harps, and really that's a combination of two sort of runs up the keyboard. One is all the white keys going up, and the second is all the black keys coming down, and so it has, I suppose, the runs down have a pentatonic feel to them, and then there's a major scale, but it's supposed to be quite difficult to, well, not really difficult, but it's a comforting sound without being too much in a key. But that's how the month started, and so what the next day I called it Zeroid. And the reason I called it Zeroid is because it was all about waves. And you had those waves of the violins, the harps. You had that waves of the harps going up and down. And then you had an improvised piano tune over the top. But I started introducing strings. So let's have a listen to this. Actually, just listening to that, I didn't introduce strings on that day at all. I moved the piano into the woodwind, or doubled the piano with the woodwind, and mixed it around in the different instruments. And then I added these, and they're also, I suppose, it's major thirds, but it has a whole tone feel about it. So still it doesn't sound as if it's in a key at all. So yes, let's just hear this one again. I've given the game away as to what's coming tomorrow. You like those contrabassoon notes at the bottom, and did you notice when they came in? Because really that's another allusion to the heartbeat. So it's the beginning of a month, and it's the sort of a month coming to life. So you've got this and really I've got lots of things going on all over the place, and you're supposed to sit there and feel this wash, and that's why I called it Zeroid, because it was all about waves and it was all coming together. Waves and energy. The next one, I added the violins, and when violins and violas, and you can hear the three notes, and they've all got different automations. So they're all crescendoing, diminuendoing. All the sections are doing it at different times, so you feel these waves again, and it just adds another layer of complexity, really. And just see what you think of this. Yeah, I love the sound of that contrabassoon at the end, that bump. But you can hear what I'm doing there with the melody. And is it a melody? There are little bits, and it's funny when you're playing lots of music like this, there are little motifs that you don't notice to start with, but gradually you listen out for them, you hear them, and then and they become waypoints. And actually, listening to the whole thing becomes much easier. And that, for the musicians that are rehearsing, that's something that happens over a period of hours, when you're practicing and when you're rehearsing. But for audiences, sometimes it's hard to get to know a piece on first hearing. And I know certainly some really modern pieces, you don't necessarily hear them the second time. But if you do and you persevere, you gradually sort of start to eke out little bits of information and little motifs and little things that are happening, and you think, oh, I hadn't noticed. One of the things we added there was the tam tam, so you hear the sort of, which happens twice, and it's that sort of detail that you pick up on hearing it more than once. One of the things I did years ago is with all these pieces that I'd received from composers, we put on a series of concerts with sort of premiering their music. But we did a series, and we did like a mini tour for each of the repertoire over the month, and that worked really well, because I suppose we got used to performing it in different. We got used to performing it more than once, but also people could hear it more than once as well. So that, I think it is the way ahead. You've got to persevere with new music and new sounds. And what I'm doing very much this month is playing with sound. And what I'm adding bits, and then I'm taking them away, and I'm chipping bits off, and I liken it to sculpting. And in fact, today I tweeted about sort of sculpting sound. And so you have this block of sound, and you're just chipping little bits off and creating something new. Yes, with sculpture, you don't have the luxury of being able to put bits back on again. Well, I suppose you could glue it on, but it's not as legitimate. And I'm sure someone would come along and say, right, okay. The next one I called Essence. And this is because I got rid of the piano and the woodwind, and added and put the tune into the xylophone and so percussion. So you've got the essence of the sound there today. So, or this was on the 4th. This was yesterday. So have a listen to this. And on that last chord, we then hit a major chord, because you've got the piccolo and the flute, and you've got the sopranos singing in the background as well. And it's quite interesting, the effect that I've created there is we had the same motif with the piccolos and flutes, but I shifted the flutes to the right a bit, so they were a little bit later. So you end up with this, and it's not all in sync. And in fact, let's just see if you can hear the difference then. So this was the day before. You can hear the flutes and the piccolos are cascading down, and it just has a different feel to it. It's what I'm wanting to do is create that just a whirl of sound, along with you've got the tam tam as well, and the voices, and the voices are making, I suppose they're making it into the augmented triad with the piccolos and flutes coming down, but they're very quiet, I think, and I'd quite like that in the background. You don't necessarily notice them until possibly at the end when you hear that major chord. First inversion. Right, so what did I call today? I've called it layloop, and this is really layers of loops. And I just combined those two words together, and layloop, and really it's a similar sort of theme to what I did yesterday, and let's have a listen to that. And so what do you think of that? So it's a very different from what we have been doing, certainly for the last 3 months. This is a different approach, and it's something that I have done before, and I quite like it. It's so tomorrow we've got to change key. We haven't necessarily gone in any direction yet, but we've got to go somewhere. And it'll be interesting to see what happens tomorrow. I quite like, for the last couple of months, I've been going up a tone. I think we need to try something different. So we'll see. I need to make a decision on that yet. But it'd be interesting to see how this month develops, because actually there will be something in there that keeps going right the way through. There are a couple of potential melodies that could be extended and made into something else. And we'll see. And then you've got that rhythm. Did you notice what I added in that day, or today? I added some. There's an ostinato in the cellos, where you've got boop, 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 and it's not in the four. I suppose it's introducing an element of time, but whereas everything else isn't necessarily in time. And so perhaps it's the taming of time. We'll see. There's lots of potential, and this is one of the things I love about the beginnings of the month, because you've got no idea how you're going to end up, but it's all part of the journey, which actually that's what it's all about for me. So we'll see. Now that I'm back, I've worked out how I can perhaps avoid the gremlins going forward. Let me know what you think, and let's see where this takes us tomorrow. Completely different adventures await. So thanks very much, and see you soon.